am both honored and excited to welcome presidential hopeful, hopefully he wins, Senator Bernie Sanders to Winthrop University. At Winthrop, we like to say that the road to the White House goes through Winthrop University. And I believe that the various candidates that we have hosted over the course of the past 12 years have proven this statement to be true. As a student at Winthrop University, I speak for the entire student body when I say that we appreciate these opportunities. They not only expose us to new ideas and viewpoints, but they create greater access to candidates that we may only have seen through our television screens. Opportunities such as these allow us to become better informed citizens and spur us to be more thoughtful leaders. Here at Winthrop, we are proud to be one of the most racially diverse public institutions in the South. As one of nearly 40% of students who are from a community of color, I value our university's dedication to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, on behalf of Winthrop College Democrats and Winthrop University, I welcome you all to campus. Thank you for your time.
Coming up next to the stage is Dr. Cornell West.
Are you here to support the visionary and courageous Bernie Sanders? I want to salute each and every one of you for being here today. This is no ordinary election. We're talking about the primacy of the moral and the primacy of the spiritual. Bernie Sanders is a moral exemplar. He has integrity, he has honesty, he has decency, he has a longevity of consistency. Is that right? Is that right? And that consistency has to do with the focusing on those that the biblical text says are the least of these. The poor, the marginal, the women, the people of color, the elderly, the poor, the orphan, the widow, the fatherless, the motherless. All of those, Malcolm X says, are catching hell. He looks at the world through the lens of everyday people, to use the language of Slash Song. He doesn't look at the world through the lens of the stock market. He doesn't look at the world through the lens of how the corporate elite are doing. He doesn't even look at the world through the eyes of the upper middle class. He knows there are human beings all the way down, but he focuses on the least of these. That's what the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. is all about. That's what the legacy of Alabama is all about. That's what the legacy of Rabbi Abraham, Joshua, Heschel, and Dorothy Day. We can go on and on and on, and let us acknowledge just 3 days from now we will be celebrating the birthday of one of the greatest artists ever to emerge out of the American civilization. His name is John Coltrane. He will be 93 years old. Born just across the border. Give it up for John Coltrane. Because you can't have a political movement, you can't have a social movement, you can't even have a campaign and electoral politics unless the moral and the spiritual and the artistic are constitutive of it. We're tired of mainstream politics by seeing what the latest polls have to say. We want to get far beyond that. And when you listen to John Coltrane's The Love Supreme, and you understand that justice is what love looks like in public. And if you want to get on the love train, here's my brother, the towering intellectual of our time in terms of the focus on working and poor people. His name is Adolph Reed Jr. His car was late, but he's on time. Give it up to our brother. No, I'm just coming to a close, making that connection to love, justice, service to others, something bigger than you that focuses on working and poor people, that brings us together across whatever barrier stands in the way.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you very much. Hi, how you doing? Yeah, I'm very happy to be at Winthrop. I've been here like several times over the last years, and the students at Winthrop participated actively in a campaign that we ran here in the state to win a ballot line for the South Carolina Labor Party, which we still have. And I've got a lot of friends and colleagues here. I'm not going to take up much time, but I want to start by saying one thing, by making one point. One of the most important facts or factoids about the 2016 election was somewhere between 6.5 and 9 million people who voted for Trump had also voted for Senator Sanders in the Democratic primary and President Obama at least once. What that means is that a simplistic understanding of Trump voters isn't going to help us or will be a distraction for us. And it means fundamentally that a good percentage of people who voted for Trump voted out of a case of mistaken identity. I mean, I know it seems obvious to us that everybody was into xenophobia and racism and homophobia and the rest. But the other side of the coin is, and I said this earlier today, people who are concerned about the interests and the values that we are concerned about, right? Environmental, saving the planet, right? Let's call it that. Right, free public higher education, like et cetera, actually got more from Richard Nixon's presidency than we've gotten from any of the 3 Democratic presidents that followed it. And that's kind of telling and a scary thought, because I'm not saying that Nixon liked us, so he didn't like us. He probably wished that 90% of the people here were someplace else. What it does mean, though, is that the social movements that we built to advance our interests were powerful enough that he couldn't not pay attention to us. Jimmy Carter could, Bill Clinton could, and the Barack Obama administration could also. And that's one of the reasons that this is the most important election in my lifetime, and you can tell I'm an old man. So I know it's the most important election in all of your lifetimes, because now, I've often joked that if Trump were to get another term, he'd be followed by Bolsonaro, right? Because this is where we are in American society now. The old, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh yeah, bullshit. The old bullshit that the Democrats have been feeding or the mainstream corporate Democrats have been feeding all of us, like in this state and elsewhere, since, pick a date, since at least 1992, it has failed completely. More and more people are feeling frustrated, left out, unheard. And the Sanders campaign is the first and the only and the best option that we have for all of us to be heard, and to save us from this other course. Because I think the wake-up call from the Trump victory was that enough people are tired and understand that they've been lied to, and now we have somebody telling the truth. And as the campaign slogan says, not me, us. And that's the other point, that we can get fired up today, and that's great to get fired up. And we all need to vote, for sure. But we need organizers, too. Like, we need to get other people to vote, right? Your friends, family, et cetera. But anyway, as I said, I'm very happy to be back on the Winthrop campus, and talk to you all later. Take care.
Up next, we have Philip Agnew and Danny Glover.
See, age before beauty. Okay, now look here, but let me say you this, man. It's good to be on the campus here. The only thing when I was on the campus more than 50 years ago, I didn't have a Bernie Sanders to come and trump around the campus and to think about I didn't have the issues that you have to think about. You know, the most incredible generation. We thought we were in the 60s, but you were the most incredible generation because you know more. You have to fight the fight that we didn't have to fight. You have to talk about the issues that we didn't have to issue. You have to right here not only save ourselves, but save humanity and the planet itself. That's what's so important here. That's why I've marched down here. We're all here because of that. Because there's only one candidate. There's only one candidate who's going to tell the truth, who's going to work on behalf of all of it. There's only one candidate. We know that. We know that. But we know that we have to go beyond whatever our fears are. What did Mark Twain say? Courage is the resistance to fear. Courage is the management of fear, but it's not the absence of fear. We have to go up and stand up for this ourselves, this moment, stand up for the future, your future, and the future beyond that, for the planet, for humanity, for the world. Bernie Sanders, the president, but you need to vote. You need to think about voting in a way that you haven't thinking about voting. You have to think about voting in a way in which you bring all of us out and bring us together. That's our opportunity. That's our responsibility. Thank you.
Hey, put your hands together for Danny Glover. So listen, there are those that tell us that we need to go slow. There are those that tell us that we need to think small. There are those that tell us that we are not going to get what was promised to us. But we say no, right? We say that we can free our people from prisons. We can provide treatment for people who have opiate addiction and been addicted to drugs for many years. We can provide an education for every single child. We can make sure that every woman, every trans person has a right to life in this country, right? So what we're going to do right now is I want everybody to stand up. All right, because listen, right now this is the choir, and we need to sing very loud for the people who are not there. So all you got to do is a call and response. I want y'all to match my energy. Do you hear me? Can you feel me? Okay, so I want you to repeat after me: power, transformation, and love. I want it. I need it. I got to have it right now. Right now. Right now. That was practice. We're going to do it another time. Power. 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 Transformation. 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 And love. And love. And love. And love. We want it. We want it. We want it. We want it. We need it. We need it. We got to have it. We got to have it. Right now. Right now. Right now. Right now. Right now. Right now. Listen, it is not about one person, it is about all of us. But we learned that from the one, the only Senator Bernard Sanders. So let's go out there and organize and do what we must do for our futures.
I give them a big hand. Next up, we have Senator Nina Turner. Come to the stage, we have Senator Nina Turner and Ben Cohen from Ben and Jerry's.
Hello, Mantra. Hello, baby.
Hello, baby. What else?
Hello, baby.
Hello, baby.
Oh my God. Can we say that?
Oh my God.
Wait. We need this other mic up here. Let me can't leave. Yeah, thank you, baby. Okay.
Now I can say, oh my God, in my own mic.
Oh my God.
What I gotta say is that, you know, before Bernie, Jerry and I used to be the most famous people from Vermont. So we are so happy that he has superseded us because he the man.
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 All right.
Okay.
What else we gonna say? Oh, I know what else we're gonna say is that, you know, Jerry and I have never campaigned for another presidential candidate before because there's never been one like Bernie Sanders.
Come on,
before.
talk about that, baby. Talk about it.
He has been my mayor, my congressman, my senator for the last 40 years. And this guy walks the talk. You know, this election, you're going to hear a lot of candidates saying all the right things. This guy has done all the right
You
things.
better say that. Can I?
And it comes from his heart,
Yeah.
his soul, his spirit. You know, this is the organizer-in-chief that we've been waiting for.
Yes.
And this is our time, and we are the people we've been waiting for.
That's it.
It is us.
It is us.
And we need to get out there and make it happen. You know, as they say, if it is to be, it's up to me. And that means getting out there and voting in this primary. You know, I never used to vote in the primary until, like, I don't know, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But
You were bad.
this is the time to vote in the primary. Now, she's going to talk about a bunch of stuff. I know. She's going to talk about a bunch of stuff, and she's going to say, oh, yeah, we can do this, we can do that.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, what we can do is stick these bumper stickers on our cars or wherever you can stick them.
On our laptop.
Because it doesn't do any good to be for Bernie if you don't tell everybody else you're for Bernie.
Yes.
All right.
Say that.
You take it away, Mister.
The Minister of Ice Cream. Come on. We represent 4 of the national co-chairs, so I want to give a shout out to our other 2 co-chairs who are not here with us, Mayor Carmen Cruz from San Juan, Puerto Rico. Give it up for Mayor. And our brother, Congressman Ron Connor from the great state of California. And we are the 4 national co-chairs. I want to lean into something that Brother Ben, or the Minister of Ice Cream, had to say about Senator Bernard Sanders. So with him, we got courage and consistency. And see, we ain't got to make stuff up for Senator Sanders. All we got to do is roll the tape, #receipts. He's been on the front line for a very long time, and it's not just because these things are polling well. When it was hard to be out there in 2016, standing up for the people, for what is right, for what is just, and for what is good, Senator Bernie Sanders was the only one to do it. Consistency and courage. He does understand that this is a corrupt system that has been rigged against the everyday people of this nation, and he didn't just start to find that out because he's running for president. He's been a long-distance runner, as Dr. Cornel West will put it, for justice for a very long time. And so, Winthrop, I just got to share this with you, that when folks ask you, what's the difference? The difference is this. And we were just with our brother, Michael Render, a.k.a. Killer Mike in North Carolina. And he explained it this way. See, some people talking about it, but we got photographs of Senator Bernie Sanders chained to black folks, fighting against segregation and bigotry and hatred. Amen. We got the receipts. So I don't know what some of them other folks were, but we got receipts on somebody that has been on this journey, standing up for UAW workers, standing up for Marriott workers, standing up for Verizon workers, helping Amazon workers get a raise of $15 an hour, baby. Disney workers, $15 an hour, baby. Over 400,000 of our closest friends got a raise because Senator Bernard Sanders has the courage to not just talk about it, but to be about it. Who's in the streets? Somebody who knows that this system is unjust, who has said clearly that we will make war with white supremacy, that on his watch we will eradicate institutional racism and bigotry in the United States of America. Somebody who understands that black men should not be gunned down. Brown, black men and women treated differently in this country. Our indigenous sisters and brothers treated differently in this country. And if you are poor and white being treated differently in this country, no more of that, because his only special interests are people like you and you and you and you and you. And all of those other presidential candidates, if I might just say this, and I want them to roll the tape, print this. All of them running for the Democratic nomination are preaching from the gospel according to Bernard Sanders. The Democrats, we wouldn't be where we are today. We would not be talking about health care as a right in this country, canceling student debt in this country, college for all in this country, women deserving their whole damn dollar in this country, making sure that our teachers make a base salary, no matter where they are, of $60,000 in this country. Talking about our homeless sisters and brothers in this country, eradicating private prisons in this country, legalizing marijuana in this country. We wouldn't be talking about any of that but for the courage of the one and only Senator Bernie Sanders. So if people want to ask you what's the difference, oh, it's what the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, is that the measure of a man is not where he stands in times of comfort and convenience. The measure of a man is not when you just kind of stay on the sidelines and you hedge a little bit. The measure of a man, of a true man and a true woman, a true leader, is where you stand in times of controversy and when things are inconvenient. And that's our Senator Bernard Sanders. Roll the tape, baby. He don't go have fundraisers with multimillionaires and billionaires and say to them that nothing is fundamentally going to change for you. If nothing fundamentally changes for multimillionaires and billionaires, then nothing fundamentally changes for you and you and you and you and you. We need somebody whose only special interests are the people. And that's Senator Bernard Sanders. Sisters and brothers, we hit the 1 million donor mark already. Power to the people. So can you do something for our sister? Because we want to bring the great senator by way of Brooklyn, right? Hail from Brooklyn through Vermont. We got to bring him here. So I want you to raise one hand for yourself and another hand for somebody else. Now we need you on this front line. When you leave here today, you got to put some sweat equity on this thing. Because folks want to count our senator out. How is it that you count the man out who laid the foundation? I just don't understand. The man who got the party started. So as my grandmother used to say, we can show you better than we can tell you, and we ain't gonna make Senator Sanders the 36th president of the United States of America, baby. Oh yeah, we're gonna do this. So, one hand for yourself and one hand for somebody else. With these hands, we will have Medicare for all. With these hands, we will cancel student debt. With these hands, we will have college for all, including trade schools. With these hands, we will have an education system that educates all of our children from pre-K to college. With these hands, we will save Mother Earth. With these hands, we will reform a criminal justice system that is rotten to the core. And with these hands, baby, black, brown, indigenous, gay, straight, queer, transgender, Buddhist, Muslim, Christian, atheist, with these hands, we will elect Senator Bernard Sanders, the next president of the United States of America. With these hands. With these hands, baby. With these hands.
Thank you all very much for being out tonight. This is a beautiful location on a beautiful evening. So while we're here, we may as well change the world, right? Let me thank all those who have spoken. Let me thank Justin Feder and friends for their music. Let me thank Mayor John Geddes for his welcoming here. Let me thank Joshua Alicia, who's head of the College Democrats. And let me thank somebody whose books I hope you read, and that is Dr. Cornel West. And while you're out reading books, read the books of Adolph Reed as well. And listen, that is, you have to Philip Agnew, who's one of the best young organizers in this country. And Danny Glover, what can we say about Danny Glover? Except you all know Danny as a great actor. I know him as somebody more than that, as somebody who has spent his entire life in the struggle for economic and racial and social justice. He has been committed to transforming this country, and I thank Danny so much for all that he has done over the years. And you have heard also this evening from somebody I've also known for a very long time, Ben Cohn, the founder of Ben & Jerry's. And I don't know if Ben told you that we intend to establish a Secretary of Ice Cream. What do you think about that? So years ago, they used to talk about a chicken in every pot. We're talking about a pint of Ben & Jerry's in every freezer in America. I can't see how I can lose the election on a platform like that. And lastly, I want to thank my good friend, Senator Nina Turner. And you have heard Nina as a speaker here tonight, but you should understand that Senator Turner has been traveling all over this country doing what I believe is the most important work that any person can do, and that is trying to save our democracy, trying to get young people and working people and people of color involved in the political process, trying to bring people together. So I thank Senator Turner so much for all that she has done. This campaign that we're running is about a lot of things. It is about defeating the most dangerous president in the modern history of the United States of America. And it is clear to me that presidents can have different points of view. Politicians can have different points of view. We can have different points of view in our democracy. But what we cannot sustain is a president who is a pathological liar. So if you are a conservative, you're a Republican, whatever you are, and you want to debate the issues, that's called democracy. That's a good thing. But what is not a good thing is somebody in the White House lying every single day. It is not a good thing to have a president who appears to love authoritarian leaders all over this country, a president who does not understand the separation of powers or what the Constitution of the United States is. Too many people over the years have fought and died to defend American democracy, and we will not allow this president to continue to trample on the Constitution of the United States or what this country is all about. But this campaign is not just about Donald Trump, who is a racist, sorry to have to say that, who is a sexist, who is a homophobe, who is a xenophobe, who is a religious bigot. Other than that, not bad. But that is not the qualities that we need in a president of the United States. But this campaign is more than just about defeating Trump. That's enormously important, and I intend to do just that. But this campaign is about more than defeating Trump. This campaign is about transforming this country. and creating a government and an economy that works for all of us, not just the top 1%. This campaign is about ending the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality that exists in this country. All right, now you don't see much of that on TV, and you don't hear about it in the Congress, but I want each and every one of you to be thinking hard about whether you are comfortable about living in a country where three wealthiest people, own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. Where the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 92%. Now here in South Carolina, and in my state of Vermont and all over this country, you got a lot of people who are working 2 or 3 jobs, and then some of them are right here. You got folks who are trying to get by on $9-10 an hour, which is very, very difficult to do. You got folks who are paying 45-50% of their limited incomes for housing. You got folks who cannot afford health insurance. You got folks who are leaving college deeply in debt. And in the midst of all of that, and by the way, tonight, another disgrace, you got 500,000 Americans sleeping out on the streets. Okay? This is not the kind of America that we have to live in. So what I'm asking you all this evening is to do something that is pretty hard, and that is to think outside of the box. See, what the system kind of tells you, what the television tells you implicitly and explicitly, what politicians tell you, is think small, not big. Maybe if we all do this, we can deal with this issue a little bit here and a little bit there. But that's about all. Because bottom line, what the establishment tells you is you're powerless. You got no power. And if you're going to be contributing hundreds of millions of dollars into the political system, I doubt it. And if you own major corporations that will determine whether jobs stay in the United States or whether they go to China or Mexico or wherever, I doubt it. You got one vote. And what the system is trying to tell you is you are powerless. What I'm here tonight to tell you is that if you stand together, if you do not allow Trump and his friends to divide us up based on the color of our skin or where we were born or our religion or the country that we came from, if we stand together around an agenda that works for all of us, we can accomplish huge things. That's the message. And as Senator Turner mentioned, the only way that change ever takes place is not some president or some congressman or senator doing something. The only way that change takes place is when millions of people stand up and demand it. And today, literally today, a few hours ago, I was in Greensboro, North Carolina. But all over this country and all over this world, people are standing up, they're going on strike, they are demanding that the United States government do something about the crisis of climate change. And I'm going to talk about climate change in a minute, but my point is that is the way that change takes place. And it's a beautiful thing because those rallies and demonstrations and strikes are not only taking place in the United States, they are taking place all over the world. And that's the way change takes place. Let me give you an example of change right now that we're seeing in front of our eyes because millions of people are demanding it. 4 years ago, I came to South Carolina, and what I said was that if you work 40 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty. Now you got a minimum wage here, which is what? Which is a $7.25, same as the federal government. And you know what that is? That's a starvation wage. Nobody can live on $7.25. Can't live on $8. You can't live on $9. And depending where you live, you can't live on $10 an hour. And what I said 4 years ago is that we should raise the minimum wage to a living wage of at least $15 an hour. Now here is my point. I'm going to make it over and over again. 4 years ago, not a long time, the idea of $15 an hour was a crazy idea. I was called a wild guy. I was called an extremist. But I raised that issue. And millions of people said, you know what? That makes sense to us. People should at least have a living wage. And you know what happened in the last 4 years? In the last 4 years, 7 states and the U.S. House of Representatives voted to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. So what that is about is if you have a vision and you're able to communicate with people and people stand together, you can accomplish big things. Nelson Mandela said something which was very, very profound. He said, everything seems impossible until it happens. Everything seems impossible until it happens. And then after it happens, people say, heck, what was the big deal? All right? And that is what the struggle that we are engaged in now. And that struggle is for you and you and you to have a vision of where you want this country to go. Understanding that we are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. All right, if we were a poor country, we'd have a certain kind of conversation. We're the richest country. Problem is, too few people have too much, and too many people have too little. But let's talk about what an agenda is, and this is what I'm running on for president. What does that mean? It means that if you work 40 hours a week, you're going to earn at least a living wage, $15 an hour. It means that in America, if you are working as a woman, you will earn the same pay as a man, equal pay for equal work. And I know this is controversial in South Carolina, but we're going to make it easier for workers to join unions. Because union workers make more money than non-union workers. Okay? And what we're talking about also is when we think about the future of America, we're thinking about the young people in America. And we're thinking about the need for all of our young people, regardless of their income, those people have the ability and the desire to get a college education and not leave school with debt. Is that a radical idea? Well, I want you to understand, and this is what thinking outside of the box is about. 11 years ago, the United States Congress, against my vote, bailed out the crooks on Wall Street and provided them with trillions of dollars of zero interest or almost zero interest loans through the Fed. Today, the fossil fuel industry receives hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks and subsidies. A couple of years ago, Donald Trump and his friends, Republican friends, gave the top 1% and large profitable corporations well over $1 trillion in tax breaks. So if we can provide huge amounts of aid to the 1% and to Wall Street and to large corporations, I think we can cancel all student debt in America. Just out of curiosity, how many of you guys will be leaving school or are already in debt, student debt? All right. Well, I think we should cancel that so that you're not going to have to pay off that debt decade after decade. And the way we do that is by imposing a modest tax on Wall Street speculation. And when we think big and not small, we're talking about a very basic issue, which is called health care. Question: how many major countries on earth do not guarantee health care to all people as a human right? Do you all believe that health care is a human right? Do you believe that whether you're rich or poor or middle class, you have the right to go to a doctor or a hospital without going bankrupt? Okay, that's all we're trying to do here. Today it seems like a radical idea. As Mandela said, in a few years it will be seen as something very obvious. And that is all we are trying to do now, is end an absurd situation where the United States is spending twice as much per person on health care as do the people of any other country. We're spending a fortune. And yet 87 million Americans are either uninsured or underinsured, and we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Why does that situation exist? Anyone know? Stand up and yell it out. Yep. Good. Absolutely right. Gentleman said that corporations with a lot of money buy lobbyists. Apropos his response, in the last 20 years, the pharmaceutical industry alone has spent billions and billions of dollars on lobbyist and campaign contributions. Anybody here know anybody who's dealing with diabetes? Okay, anybody here have diabetes? Anybody here taking insulin? All right. Last month, I made a trip to Canada with a bunch of folks from the Midwest who are dealing with diabetes. We bought insulin in Canada for 1/10 of the price that is paid in the United States. Same exact product, same company. And I want you to think about how that happens. And the answer is that what the gentleman said, is that in this country, the drug companies can charge us any prices they want because there is no regulation. They own the United States Congress. Congress doesn't regulate them. They regulate the Congress with their lobbying and their campaign contributions. That's what we are taking on. So I believe, and more Americans believe, in a Medicare for all single-payer program. And what that means is no more premiums, no more deductibles, no more co-payments, no more out-of-pocket expenses. We will pay for health care out of the general tax base in a progressive way, which will mean that almost everybody in America, except the very, very wealthy, will be paying less for the health care that they get. And let me tell you what that health care is. That health care means you go to any doctor you want, you go to any hospital you want. It means that if you have major surgery in a hospital, you come out of that hospital without any bill at all. Now we're going to pass that. We have a minor obstacle in our way, and that is the healthcare industry that made $100 billion in profits last year. Just a minor obstacle. And they're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on dishonest ads that you'll see on television and hear on the radio. When you hear those ads telling you how terrible Bernie Sanders is or how terrible Medicare for All is, understand who is paying for those ads. People who are paying for those ads made $100 billion in profits last year, while 30,000 Americans died because they couldn't get to the health care they need on time, and 500,000 Americans went bankrupt. Those are the people who are paying for those ads. And they could spend all the money they want on those ads. We are going to defeat them because the American people want Medicare for all. And when we talk about thinking big and not small, we are talking about one of the greatest existential threat that not only the United States, but the whole planet is facing, and that is climate change. Well, that's right. Unfortunately, we have a president who thinks that climate change is a hoax. Well, I think that Trump is a hoax. But when you have a president who ignores the reality of climate change, ignores what the scientists are telling us, he is threatening not only this country and your state and my state, he is threatening the survival of the entire planet. So we have, just a couple of weeks ago, introduced the most comprehensive climate change proposal ever introduced by any candidate running for president, or I think any candidate running for anything. I mean, it is a major proposal. And the reason we did this is very simple. We believe in science. And scientists are telling us that if we do not act boldly within the next few years, the damage done in this country will be irreparable, unable to be repaired. Now, all of you know, and I don't want to get you too nervous, but you all just saw recently what happened in the Bahamas. You saw what happened a few years ago in Puerto Rico. You saw, remember what happened with Hurricane Katrina, what happened to New Orleans. You have seen in Charleston, flood after flood after flood. Floods right now unprecedented in Texas, literally as we speak. They ain't going to get any better. The situation will get worse. We're talking about rising sea levels, which will flood coastal regions all across this country, including Charleston, as a matter of fact. Parts of Miami will be underwater, New York City maybe. And we're looking all over the world at more drought, where people cannot grow the food that they need because of drought, get the water they need. We're looking at mass migrations of people, because if you don't have food and you don't have water, you're going to go elsewhere. And when you go elsewhere, you're laying the groundwork for conflict and wars. So we have a major crisis on our hands. And we are going to have the courage to take on the fossil fuel industry and to tell this very powerful institution that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. So our goal is to transform our economy away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And by the way, when we do that, we're going to create up to 20 million good-paying jobs. Let me say a word about another issue which haunts me very much, and that is a very broken and racist criminal justice system. Now, what is that about? Again, I'm asking you guys to think outside of the box, to think beyond what you read in the papers or you see on television or what you hear in school. Ask yourself a simple question. How does it happen that in the United States, the wealthiest country on earth, we have more people in jail than any other country on earth, including communist China, which is 4 times our size? How does that happen? Well, it happens for a lot of reasons. But one of the things that we have got to do, and that I will do as president, is invest in our young people in jobs and education rather than more jails and incarceration. Okay? And part of the problem, I'm going to ask you a question. I've been asking this question just in the last few weeks, and I've been amazed at the response that I get. One of the things that I intend to do as president is to end the very, very destructive so-called war on drugs. All right? And I talked to a guy this morning, and he said that When he was a young man, he got arrested for something. We didn't go into all the details. I assume that it was drugs. And he got a criminal record. And then he tried to get into school, he tried to get a job, and there were real impediments in front of him. People said, well, no, he's a very bright guy. We'd rather not hire you. He ended up starting his own business and did very, very well. But all over this country, there are people whose lives have been destroyed because they have a criminal record associated with possession of marijuana. Question, how many of you know anybody, or perhaps yourselves, who have been arrested for the possession of marijuana? Please raise your hand. That is a lot of people. That is a lot of people. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to, A, decriminalize and in fact legalize possession of marijuana in this country. And number two, we are going to expunge the records of those people who have been arrested for marijuana. Number three, many of you don't know this, but right now we have about 2 million people in jail. That's federal, state, and local jails. About 20% of those people, some 400,000 people, are in jail without having been convicted of a crime. Why are they in jail? Anyone know? That's right. Because they cannot afford cash bail. That is outrageous, and that is not what the United States should be about. We're going to end cash bail in this country. All over this country, we have seen acts of violence committed by certain police officers. We are going to hold police departments accountable all over this country. But our goal is to make sure that we do everything possible to keep people from going to jail and to make sure that when they get out of jail, they return to society in a way that allows them to live productive lives. So criminal justice is a major issue that we have together got to focus on. The other issue out there that you hear every day is the issue of immigration. And on that issue, let me just say a few words. As President of the United States, I will end the demonization of immigrant people in this country. But not only will we end the demonization, we will introduce legislation for comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. We will make sure that we will reestablish through executive order legal status to the 1.8 million young people in this country who are in the DACA program. And we will develop a humane border policy which does not snatch babies away from the arms of their mothers. And I'm glad to see some folks here wearing T-shirts which says, "Moms demand action." Thank you, moms and dads. We have an epidemic of gun violence in this country. All of us are horrified and disgusted that every week, it seems, we see another mass shooting, but it's not just what you see on television. My guess is that today, somewhere in America, somebody shot 2 or 3 people, and you don't know about it, but it goes on every single day. We lose about 40,000 people a year to gun violence. A lot of it suicide, a lot of it killings. The American people want gun safety legislation. There's no debate about that. That debate is over. The American people want to expand background checks. They want to do away with the gun show loophole. They want to do away with the so-called, with the provision that allows people to legally, the straw man provision that allows people to legally buy guns, go through a background check, and then sell them to criminals. And more Americans, and now a pretty strong majority of Americans now believe what I have believed for a long time, that we must ban the sale and distribution of assault weapons in this country. Now, you might ask, if the American people want gun safety legislation, why isn't it happening? And the answer is very simple. And the answer is that the Republican Party and the President of the United States are frightened and intimidated by the NRA. That's the simple truth. I wish I could tell you it was more complicated than that. It is not. As President of the United States, I will not be intimidated by the NRA. And there's another issue, which I know is, again, controversial here in South Carolina. But let me tell you what I think. And I believe that it is women who have the right to control their own bodies and not politicians. And so my promise to you is that I will not only do everything I can to defend a woman's right to choose, but that I will never appoint or nominate anybody to the U.S. Supreme Court who is not 100% in favor of Roe v. Wade. Let me just conclude by saying this. You are enormously powerful people if you choose to exercise that power. What the system wants you to believe, is that you really shouldn't get involved. Why do you want to waste your time thinking about politics, thinking about who to vote for, thinking about the issues? You got better things to do than that, right? No, you don't. You really don't. So I don't want to be a killjoy here and tell you that that is your responsibility as American citizens. It's a responsibility that was given to you by people who fought and died so that you have a right to control this country. And I know that you got a lot of friends who think that politics is nonsense. They don't vote. They're so sophisticated. They think you're a jerk. You know, you told them you went to a Bernie Sanders rally and they'll laugh at you and think you're a jerk and all that stuff. And this is what I would suggest that you tell those people. Tell them you're sick and tired of hearing them complain about the student debt they're going to have when they get out of college. Tell them you're tired of hearing about they can't afford health care, what is going to happen after they leave school. Tell them you're tired of hearing about them moaning and groaning about making $9 an hour. Or hearing them complain about climate change or racism or sexism or homophobia. People are very good at complaining, ain't so good in acting. All right? So I don't want to get you too nervous, but the future of this country and the world rests with you. It's true. It rests with your generation. And the good news is that the younger generation in America today is, in my view, the most progressive younger generation in the modern history of this country. And you should be very proud of that. It is a generation which is not racist, not sexist, not homophobic, not xenophobic. It is a very, very decent generation of young people. And I thank you for that. That is the good news. That's the good news. But now I'm going to give you the bad news. You're still a good generation. Bad news is the voting rate within your generation is much too low. And here is the simple truth. If your generation, people say under 30, voted at the same rate as people over 65, we would transform this country. That's about it. Because your generation is a progressive generation. So what we are trying to do in this campaign is create a political revolution. That's what we're talking about. It's a campaign which says us, not me, because I can't do it alone. I need millions of people to help me. And you know why? Because Wall Street and the insurance companies and the drug companies and the fossil fuel industry and the military industrial complex and the prison industrial complex. These are very powerful guys. They have unlimited sums of money. They own the media. They are very powerful people. And the only way that real change ever takes place, I want you to think about it, whether it is workers' rights and labor unions, whether it is civil rights, whether it is women's rights, whether it is gay rights, whether it's environmental justice. The only way that change ever takes place is when millions of people stand up and demand it. Demand it. And that's where we are right now. That's the moment in history where we are right now. If you believe that people who work for a living should not be in poverty, if you believe that health care is a human right, if you think that young people should not be in debt because they got a higher education, if you think we have got to save the planet and take on the fossil fuel industry, if you believe we should not demonize immigrants but move them towards citizenship, if you believe that we've got to reform a broken and racist criminal justice system, if you believe that women have the right to control their own bodies, if you believe that we should end a system in which billionaires can contribute unlimited amounts of money to buy elections and suppress the vote, making it harder for young people and people of color to vote, if you believe all of that, or any of that, or more, you must be involved in the political process. I understand. Look, hard to believe I was once young too. And I know it's cool to go out, watch the football games, go to the basketball games, occasionally have a beer or two, or maybe smoke something that may not be legal. All right. I understand that. That's cool. But I'm asking you to be cool in another way, to be cool in defending American democracy, be cool in creating the kind of country where justice is our guiding principle, not greed. So I'm asking a lot of you. I know that. I'm asking a whole lot of you. I'm here to ask, obviously, for your votes, but I'm asking for more than that. This is a perilous and unprecedented moment in American history, and in fact, in world history, given the crisis in climate change. We cannot throw our arms up in despair. We cannot get depressed. We've got to stand up and fight back. At the end of the day, the 1% is enormously powerful. I'm a United States Senator. I deal with these guys every day. They have unlimited amounts of money. They have extraordinary power over our economy. But at the end of the day, the 1% is 1%. And we are 99%. And if we do not allow Trump and his friends to divide us up by the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation or our religion, if we stand together and say, you know what? We want a nation of economic justice. We want a nation of social justice. We want a nation of racial justice. We want a nation of environmental justice. If those are our goals, and we're prepared to stand up and fight, we can achieve those goals and create the kind of America we know we can become. Thank you all very much.